You know, a game is just incredible when no matter how long it's been, people still talk about it. It still gets brought up. It still gets put into the minds and the hearts of gamers out there. And at its true essence, people just can't get enough of it. And whenever there's an opportunity to pick up the game, especially when it comes to a Nintendo title and it's a bit cheaper or you can find it for a deal, people flock at those type of games. And that's exactly what The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was and is. It's an unstoppable force for Nintendo and a game that I feel truly started really everything for me in my second or third win trying to create content here on YouTube. It was in a point in my life where things just weren't going great for me, but there was this game that came out and it really helped propel me to think that I can do content. I can actually really make videos, and it's a game that can propel a system to be more popular. And Breath of the Wild has checked every single box when it comes to what a true system seller is, what a timeless classic is, and what a game that people will really just remember forever. But before we continue, we are giving away a Nintendo Switch 2 at 140,000 subscribers or on September 1st, whichever comes first. Subscribe, like, comment. The winner will be chosen at random and it's a worldwide giveaway. Thanks, peeps. So the reason why I'm talking about this is because The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is currently the second best-selling game on the Nintendo eShop here in the US at right around $49. Now, this is the Switch 2 version of the game, not the Switch 1 version with the upgrade pack, but the upgrade pack has always been in the top sellers since the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2 last year. But the Switch 2 edition, which includes, of course, the base game, plus it includes the upgrade pack, which is an additional $10. But if you have the Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack, you can get the upgrades for Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild at no additional cost while your sub is active. So that's how I've played it. I don't have the physical version of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild on the Nintendo Switch 2, but I do have the Switch 1 version, and I just use my expansion pass in order to play it on there. But the thing about it is the fact that this game is over 9 years old. It'll be 10 years old next year in 2027, March, launch title, of course, for the Nintendo Switch 1 all those years ago. But the fact that it can have a sale at $49, and that's off of the regular 70 because it's 60 plus the 10 with the upgrade pack, and it shoots all the way up to number 2, I definitely think Nintendo should consider, when it comes to some of these big tentpole games, getting them a bit more sales here and there. Now, of course, if you want, you've been able to get it for under $50 if you just find a used copy and then you do the upgrade pack. There you go. Or if you already have expansion pass and you find a used copy, you can always find used stuff cheaper when it comes to Nintendo games, people selling on Facebook Marketplace and all that. But this is a digital copy if you want it right there and you want it more conveniently, or people just wanting to have it maybe another version for like a different system or something like that, different account or whatever the case is. But the fact that it jumped up that much, that just shows you what this is all about when it comes to Breath of the Wild, that it truly is that timeless classic that people will jump all over. As soon as there's a simple sale or something that they see, they will buy the game. And I like to see that. Definitely like to see some more sales from Nintendo, but one thing that people always say online is that Nintendo never has sales, but that's obviously false. They do have sales. It's just every now and then, and they value the IP. That's one thing that Nintendo always does, whether you agree or you disagree, but I think everybody agrees with how Nintendo operates when it comes to their employees for the most part. When you have no layoffs or you have no studio closures, you have good salaries. I think part of the reason why they can do all that, in addition to adding 300 full-time new members instead of firing people and shutting down studios like Microsoft and Sony and many other third-party companies, is because Nintendo does keep the value of their IP. They always have that, so they're always getting consistent revenue and profit to make sure the business is stable. They're not worried about having to say, okay, we have to sell 5 billion copies right there at launch because this game is going to be $15 or $20 in the next 6 months or a year. They have that stability within their IP, and therefore they can also say we're going to have that stability within our game sales and within our business to keep all of our studios, to keep all of our people. And they've even done more spending than ever when it comes to buying studios. We usually don't see Nintendo do that, but over the last 5 years or so, they've purchased quite a number, a lot more than they had in the previous 20 years when it comes to a studio with Bandai Namco Singapore, Shiver Entertainment, and Next Level Games. So for me at least, looking at all of this, it definitely sets a precedent, sets a tone when it comes to that. When you can have these incredible experiences like Breath of the Wild become timeless classics and true evergreen games, to where it doesn't matter if it's 5 years ago or if it's going on 10 years ago, or I think even 5 years in the future from now. Breath of the Wild is still going to be a game that people talk about very dearly because of what it's done. It's sold over 33 million plus units, and I think now at this point it's going to add up to even more than that. We could probably see 40 million units by the end of this generation with the Nintendo Switch 2. I think it's going to sell millions upon millions more of units to people that pick up the Nintendo Switch 2. And because of the Zelda movie that's coming out next year, I think that's going to create a ton of new fans, and I'm pretty sure Nintendo's going to have some more sales for Breath of the Wild on the Switch 2, Tears of the Kingdom, and just other Zelda games around that time too. So I think they're going to really take advantage of that and just get more people into Zelda, which is awesome because I've been playing since the original on the NES, and it was always an incredible experience to me. And I think that's why I resonated so much with Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild felt like, to me at least, the original Legend of Zelda game, but just made in a modern sense. The original Legend of Zelda game was not like Ocarina of Time or like Skyward Sword or Twilight Princess with the dungeon structure. I mean, the dungeons were there, but they were far more simplistic, and it was more about navigating the open world, which is what an open world was back in the NES, as much as you can do back then, and the exploration through that. Breath of the Wild to me feels like a direct conversion of that original Legend of Zelda game, and I love the original Legend of Zelda. So for me at least, it was incredible to see that, and it's one of those things to where I'll always cherish between the first Legend of Zelda game and of course Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, if you also look at it too, the Switch 2 version with that Switch 2 Pro Controller, although you can use the Switch 2 Pro Controller on the Switch 1 version as well if you're playing through there, but with the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller, I think it's dope because it does add those extra buttons, and it actually makes playing Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild a lot easier when it comes to, or more like, I would just say more convenient, when it comes to scrolling through inventory and certain things, just having options available for you. So that's pretty cool too. And I do think that the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild success, along with Tears of the Kingdom, should give Zelda Switch 2 some more extra time for development. Now, this is one thing that I'm not so sure on. We know that Ocarina of Time remake is coming, and I'll talk about that more in just a bit because I want to talk about that anytime we get a chance to talk about Zelda. You know we got to bring up Ocarina of Time remake because that's going to be a behemoth later this year. But I do think that because Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom ended up selling 50 million units plus, that's going to give them so much time, so much resources to get the next Legend of Zelda game done. They don't have to rush, they don't have to hurry, they can truly get a masterpiece going and make another timeless experience. Because Breath of the Wild was great, Tears of the Kingdom was great too, and I think that they really need to make sure that this next brand new Legend of Zelda game truly lives up to what we saw, not just for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but also for the other previous Legend of Zelda games. Ocarina of Time, you also have Skyward Sword, Wind Waker, all these games, Twilight Princess, all these games are 90 plus rated. There hasn't been a major 3D Zelda on its original hardware that hasn't reviewed better than like a 92 or something like that, 92 or 93 most of the time, or even high 90s. So Legend of Zelda is a legendary franchise with a crazy track record. So I do think that they are going to take the time and effort and everything that they need to do to make sure that this game is incredible. They've got Monolith Soft, they've got the Zelda team, they've got Mr. Aonuma, they've got everything that they need. And I think that with the Nintendo Switch 2, they've truly got a system that can create something spectacular. I mean, I was blown away by Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild on the Nintendo Switch 1. Switch 2 blows the system out of the water when it comes to fidelity and what you can do. I think that it's just enough, but it doesn't do anything too much to the point to where you're going to overwhelm your development teams with a lot of different tech things. So I think it's that perfect happy medium from what they've done before and also advancing the tech quite a bit. So very excited to see how that works out. Now let's talk about the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake. So there's been a lot of talk about this, especially with Star Fox that recently launched, and people are thinking, oh, well, since Star Fox was pretty much a one-to-one gameplay remake of it with some added extras, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time will be the same. And I'm going to have to disagree with that statement. And the reason why I disagree with that thought process is because when it comes to Star Fox, that gameplay is timeless. That, when it comes to like the rail shooter, there's not really much more that you can do with that. Now, sure, you can have new levels, you can have different things, but it perfected it. Star Fox 64 was a perfection of the rail shooter, perfection of like the side-scrolling shooter from the old school days brought into a new perspective in 3D. There's not a ton that you need to do when it comes to a remake to touch that one up. All you got to do is put it at 60 frames per second, greatly increase the graphics. You can add in the new visual style. You can put in a battle mode. Those are the things that you need to do for that type of game. And it's more of a budget title. They're not going to break the bank when it comes to Star Fox, because Star Fox is not a massive IP like The Legend of Zelda. It's very good IP and it's sold multiple millions in the past, but it's not something to where you can go and kind of just spend so much on it when it comes down to that. So I think that they did that because of the type of game that it is, because of the type of gameplay, rail shooter. That's the reason why it's more of a one-to-one type of thing. With The Legend of Zelda, with all the different Zelda games that have came out since Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time that have incredible gameplay advancements, you can't just go back to that same Chambanra style of combat and what they did in there. But what you can take when it comes to the timeless gameplay, you can take the dungeons, you can take the layout, you can take the structure. All of that still works for the gameplay when it comes to an action adventure game. But as an adventure game with a fairly empty open area, they need to kind of flesh that part out in order for it to actually truly live up to a remake. Because if you look at the graphics, just from what we saw with Link, it is a full in-depth remake. Stunning graphics is what they've described it as. You can't have that level of fidelity and graphics and then have that empty feel the way that it is from the Nintendo 64, but just like in Super HD or something like that. You're going to have to redesign it. You're going to have to add in new elements. You're going to have to flesh out that Hyrule field with a lot more things to do. Otherwise, it's just going to be really weird. Now, don't get me wrong. They can still do it and it would be fine if they just did a straight up one-to-one, but something tells me that there's going to be added activities and other things to do within Hyrule Field on top of having the dungeons that we know and love designed in a certain way to where it's not completely different, but the visual look of it is such a uplifting and upgrade to it that it's going to feel different despite it being the same dungeons that we all know and love. Star Fox is a one-to-one remake. What happens in the original happens here. But the facelift and graphics just kind of going into certain areas like Corneria and places, it's such a massive difference. It almost feels like a different game, especially when you combine the HD Rumble 2 with the visuals and everything. It just creates an experience to me that just blows away the original Nintendo 64 game and of course the Super Nintendo game. So I think that if they can create that same euphoria, but with actual new and different things added in, because an adventure game, you're going to have to add some more stuff than like a rail shooter. I think that The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is going to be a rousing success as a remake. Sure, there'll be some controversy with it. There's always controversy with any remake, even with Star Fox, people complaining about the graphics, people complaining about the voice acting. But like I stated, when you actually play the game yourself, you realize what changes they made and why they made them and how it's just so much fun to play because the game design at its core is just peak. So I think that with Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, we're going to get that gameplay design that made it such a timeless classic that people still play to this day. But I do think that there are going to be a lot of different changes and additions to the gameplay, content, animations, and everything just because of the type of game, it being an adventure game. I'm looking at all the other Zeldas that have came out since then that have done better than Ocarina of Time when it comes to gameplay. You can't just have it towards the exact same. So I do see them changing that up and fleshing things out to where it's a lot better than what maybe people were expecting. But Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild definitely helping to get new people in as the Switch 2 is getting near that price increase. I think you're going to see a lot of people picking up the Nintendo Switch 2 because of that. We saw that in Japan, big sales there, but a drop off after that. But I do think that once new games start coming out, we're going to see more people picking it up. And of course, we're seeing a little bit of an implosion when it comes to the gaming market with Xbox and PlayStation because of the price increases. I think that games like Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, the back catalog, in addition to the new games coming out, this is the perfect opportunity for Nintendo to truly say, we've got actual real gamers games to play. Don't get me wrong. People are allowed to like whatever they want. Obviously, they don't have GTA as of right now at this point. But what they are going to have is a lot of fantastic games that you can pick up and play. RPGs, action games, rail shooters, all sorts of stuff. And it's going to serve a large variety of different gamers out there. So I think that's the most exciting thing for me, at least, with the Nintendo Switch 2, is that I went from so many different style of real gamers game type of titles, from Star Fox, and then you also have stuff like Pokemon Pocopia, which is a whole different type of game, but very interesting. And then later this year, you're going to have a bunch of other stuff like Splatoon Raiders, in addition to Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, Ocarina of Time Remake, Nintendo Switch Sports Resort. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff coming up. So it's an exciting time to be a gamer. Plus the third-party support like Orbitals, that looks really cool. Dragon's Dogma 2, Dark Arisen. You got Lies of P coming to Nintendo Switch 2, Trails in the Sky, second chapter. A lot of great stuff, a lot of great games. Very excited for the Nintendo Switch going forward. And of course, Ocarina of Time is the crown jewel of 2026 for a lot of Nintendo Switch 2 owners. So we'll see how that does. But what do you think about Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild being unstoppable here? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, peeps, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you for the next one. Peace.